And judges, would you be kind enough to introduce yourselves?
Good morning. We're so glad you're here. My name is Rita McCann, and I'm an attorney in Huntsville, Alabama, and these are your other two judges.
Hello, I'm Thomas Mackey in the History Department at the University of Louisville and with the Law School here at Louisville.
Good morning, I'm Jay Barth. I'm the Chief Education Officer for the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, and a retired professor of American politics at Hendrix College. We're so happy to see you.
Please tell us who you are.
Hello and good morning. My name is Cleese Christopher.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Arms.
Hello, my name is Leah Moore. Hello, my name is Amala Chanda, and our coach is Justin Robbins.
Are you all ready for question number 2 this morning? We getting some feedback on one of the mics? Right. Unit 3, question 2. There is nothing I dread so much as a division of the Republic into two great parties, each arranged under its leader and in opposition to each other. What issues led to the formation of the original political parties? To what extent have those issues persisted in American political parties? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of a unified or a divided government? You may begin.
As George Washington's second presidential term drew to a close, he offered a sober warning to the young nation regarding the formation of political parties, that the alternate domination of one faction over the other, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, national party dissension, is itself a frightful despotism.
However, true to James Madison's observation in Federalist 10, factions are inseparable from our nature, and by the election of 1800 were firmly entrenched in the American political system. While some of the original disputes traced back to the debate between the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, political disagreements among the major figures of the day intensified during the first Washington administration.
One major source of contention was Alexander Hamilton's plan to consolidate state debts into one national debt in a new financial system, a plan that Thomas Jefferson and James Madison vehemently opposed, but Hamilton believed was essential to stabilizing the nation's economy. Eventually, this compromise of 1790 moved the nation forward, but Jefferson's ensuing departure from the administration foreshadowed the emergence of an opposition party. In the contentious election of 1800, the nation rocketed past the point of no return. As John Adams, a Federalist, ran for re-election, he found himself opposed by partisan divide on both sides as the tumultuous First Party era kicked into high gear. The nation's politics began to pursue self-interest over the classical Republican priority of unity, leading the young nation in a new direction.
In many ways, the original Federalist and Anti-Federalist dispute were verbatim across generations. Hamilton's Federalist Party sought a federal banking system, while Jefferson's Democratic Republicans fought against the assumption of state debts. Similarly, Lincoln's Republican Party eventually sought to eradicate slavery, while Southern Democrats fought for state rights to perpetuate it.
In the modern era, the Democratic Party consistently proposes national policy action, like raising the federal minimum wage or advancing universal health care, while the Republican Party would prefer state-level policies to lead whenever possible to better respond to unique local needs within each individual state.
As a result of today's two-party system, voters often create divided or united government as societal reactions to crisis or upheavals. For example, united government under the Democratic Party in the 20th century made it easier to pass programs like Social Security and Medicare as the nation faced economic devastation in the height of the civil rights movement, respectively. On the other hand, a united government may not be as representative of the people or could risk a version of tyranny of the majority as described by James Madison in Federalist 10. For example, for Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal policies, the Democratic Party's more hands-on federal economic interests wrested power from state and local governments that would never be returned.
Today, united government like the ones under Franklin D. Roosevelt have become less common due to polarization and first-past the post elections. The tight split between parties, as well as simply needing a majority to take a seat and combination, have made it increasingly difficult for one party to have an advantage and unite the House, Senate, and presidency.
In a divided government, however, the legislative process is slowed due to the checks and balances embedded in the Constitution. For instance, in March of 2020, a first round of stimulus was passed in response to COVID-19, Yet it took another 9 months for both branches of Congress to compromise on a second stimulus bill. During these 9 months, there was much controversy about whether the stimulus was too small or too large, which led to a delayed transmission of the bill to the president for evaluation.
Overall, political parties have grown throughout history to further certain major interests, such as a stronger states' rights or a more centralized government. At times, this conflict leads to united or divided government with their own advantages and disadvantages, which continue to be apparent in how the government handles issues.
Thank you for your time. We look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you so much.
Well, let me jump in if that's all right with my colleagues here. I think this is an interesting overview of this evergreen question of political parties, political factions, and how does consensus or public policy emerge from these clash of ideas. The sense I got, both from the question you were asked and kind of the way that you went about answering it, is that you're kind of skeptical about political parties, and yet they have positive functions. Can you take the side or help me understand how political parties can help bring about public policy or help bring about debate and compromise on issues?
Well, political parties do help to link people to the government in the sense that it can help unite the people on a certain number of interests, and it can also help keep the government accountable. And it's just a way it can help make sure that the government is doing right by the people.
In a lot of ways, political parties can be linkage institutions that link the people to their government in the ways of appointing people or getting representatives directly into the House or Senate to this day.
Also, parties, especially third parties, help sway the issues on the table. For instance, if you talk about the Populist Party during the early 1900s, help with make the movement with getting the 17th Amendment passed, also with the 16th Amendment because of what their political ideals were.
Yeah, interesting.
What would the United States be better off with multiple parties? No matter what do you see as the key barriers to making that happen?
I think America would be better off with multiple parties, especially because in a 2016 survey, it showed that 61% of Americans don't believe either party really shows their political ideas.
And to add on to Leah's point, the one way that having multiple parties would make things worse would be that with the spoiler effect, if you vote for a third party candidate, you'd basically be throwing away your vote. And you can really see this in the 2000 election with the Green Party and the Democratic Party and the Republican. George Bush won the presidency because a lot of people were voting for the Green Party and took away from the Democratic Party.
To mitigate some of the effects of the spoiler system that Khalees is talking about, you could potentially propose a proportional representation system, which allows for people to vote third parties and get representatives in the House or Senate into the legislative branch.
We have lots of, obviously in each state in which we live, we have our political parties. But mostly when we get here to We the People, we end up talking a lot about federal government, when in fact, all of this, at least from what I have learned, starts from the ground up. How much impact do you think state government, state parties have on propelling what happens in Washington? I hope I'm not confusing you by that. Go ahead.
I think state parties do have somewhat of an effect. I think state parties are at least with with state parties, they want to be able to represent the people of their own state, and I think it really causes there to be differences between the states, as you have legislators that may be like more Republican or Democratic, and that can also sway like who you send into Congress at the national level, especially like if a state is that is generally Democratic, they're more likely to send a Democratic representative or senator into the national Congress.
Additionally, the westernmost states during the progressive era that Leah was talking about earlier were big fans of the populist movement, and one of the ways they did this was through the passage of the 19th Amendment. Wyoming was the first state to pass the voting rights for women, which eventually spurs into the early 1900s, the passage of the 19th Amendment for women to be allowed to vote.
I also think that having like secured states with their party can affect when it comes to the presidency and the electoral college, because the president may sway their votes to try to gather the swing states because of the security that they have with their certain states. For instance, like the Democratic Party knows that California is mainly going to vote blue.
Yeah, interesting. What about one of the issues we see looking at the big spread of US history is that there have been times where political parties have proved fundamental in bringing about compromise, bringing about new ideas. But we've also seen times where the parties break down and the politics breaks down on intractable issues. In the 1850s, 1860 election, the expansion of slavery into the Western territories leads to the breakdown of the political party system. What kind of issues do you think confront us or more recent American history that might be seen as such intractable, that would bring about third parties or a complete party reorganization, if any?
I think our increase of polarization with today's society, especially when it comes to how media portrays both parties, can certainly further us apart, where it makes us harder to compromise and could potentially entrench us into another party system.
Going up of what Leo was saying, I think I think primaries have also kind of led to our inability to kind of or I guess that really led to increased polarization, because you now have like candidate-centered campaigns where people are trying to stick out and they're going to go to one extreme end or the other in order to be able to stick out and win that.
This leads to like the emergence of outsider candidates that maybe we saw in the 2016 election, which might move us into a new party era if you believe that the outsider candidates, rather than being different to the main party per se.
Also, I do think gerrymandering has a play in it, because when you're grouping all people who have certain ideas together, it can make this echo chamber effect. And when you're surrounded by things that are only about aligned with your ideas, it can have an effect.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, do you all want to start with comments?
Sure, I'll jump in. Look, this is one of those evergreen questions ever since the Constitutional Convention forward, about how do we channel strong personalities, strong opinions, differing personalities and opinions into appropriate political channels. And at the time, factions and then eventually formal political parties. And these have been challenging to the American system and the American polity for a long time. I think you did a nice job of covering the waterfront and digging into some of these issues. So I thought you did a really nice job in sort of thinking through the problem of the question and thinking through some of these big issues that confront us today. Nicely done.
Yeah, and I thought in the question and answer section I first also showed, I thought calm and grace, and you really moved your answers around. and showed, full participation and really took turns in a careful way. I don't know what system you had for signaling each other, but you didn't step on each other, and you listened to each other as well.
I didn't realize how it was going to be when you have all of y'all on one camera, but it's so nice. It's very similar to us sitting in front of you in Washington, and I appreciate it. And I also appreciate seeing your support back behind. I think that's great. I appreciate also that you all made this effort. I can't tell you how, in my mind, difficult it is to learn all this material and do what you all have done. And these questions are not easy. These two professors here are tough customers. And I have to, that's not meant to do anything but praise you in that you were willing to answer and do a great job with things that we all don't have all the answers to. So good luck the rest of the way. And I really appreciated the good job you did today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great luck.